Hello and welcome to the Refs Need Love To podcast, a show that gives you a real, raw, and behind-the-scenes view of one of the hardest jobs on the pitch, the referee. I'm your host, David Gerson, a grassroots referee with 9 years of experience and over 1,200 matches under my belt. You can find me at refsneedlove2.com, on TikTok, and on Instagram. This week, we're going to look back at my personal 2023 as a referee. I mean, lots happens in life, but let's talk referee. What I hope to achieve in 2024 and some of the new rule changes coming to the MLS next season. And of course, we're going to end with a few notes from the mailbag. Let's start with the MLS rule changes coming up for the 2024 season kicking off in March. Now, the MLS has always been on the cutting edge of change. It's widely known that they kind of view us as customers as opposed to fans or supporters. And so they really think about, how they're going to drive more butts in seats, more viewers on television, and really convert Americans who are not yet sold on soccer and think that it might be boring or too slow, to become fans of the game. Again, whether it was the penalties they used to do to decide games at the end that were ending in ties, where they had someone start with the ball at the center circle and run towards, the goalkeeper who could come out as far as they wanted as well. I mean, just like kind of like a hockey shootout type of situation. They did the same thing in the early days of the MLS to make the game more exciting. They were also the first league to adopt VAR and arguably have done a far better job with VAR than notably the Premier League. They're constantly tinkering to make the on-field product better than what it is today. Now, sometimes it's for good, sometimes I think it's for bad, but I think the changes we're going to see here are going to be interesting. I understand the reasoning behind it, that's for sure. So let's talk about the new rules they're going to be implementing next year. So the first one we're going to talk about, really both of them, are dealing with the issue of quote unquote time wasting. Now, obviously, there are times when a ball should be out of play and we need to wait a little for a restart. A goal kick, a free kick, a throw in, a corner kick, things of that nature. Okay. That is a moment where play does need to stop, and it could stop for 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, depending on what the situation is, if someone's down or injured or something of nature. And we're going to talk about that today here as well. But other times, there are occasions where people, let's say a foul occurs, and then someone really hams it up and is faking an injury. Okay. And you know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's a little bit of a foul, but the team is in the lead, the team who gets fouled. And so they just take forever on getting up, acting like they've been trucked or absolutely crushed when they've just been barely grazed or something of that nature. So that is, a thing that happens because, the game is not outrageously long. And we're talking about a 90-minute match. And then there's, of course, stoppage time. But for every 30 seconds or a minute that someone is down on the ground, well, that's another minute less than your team, the team that you're playing, your opponent will have a chance to actually win the game and get a goal. And so I think that's really important to talk about and understand that, running time off of the clock is, something that we do in timed sports, whether it's in American football, whether it's in basketball. I mean, these are things where there's a finite clock. And yes, it is a little, you say finite, I don't know about finite in soccer, but, certainly the more time that you take down, it doesn't always equate to time being added on at the end of the match because all of that is very subjective, based on the referee and the fourth official, what do they really consider time wasting? How much of it is legitimate? So that is one thing that happens when there's fouls and someone goes down. Sometimes there's not even a foul. Someone just goes down and they have a cramp Ooh, we've seen that often, right? Like you're getting to the latter stages of the matches and someone pulls up with a cramp just when the ball goes out of the way, out for a corner kick or goes out for a throw in for the opposing team. The team that's, trailing, all of a sudden the team that's in the lead, one of their players will go down with cramp and they're screaming, for help. And then all of a sudden someone stretches them out and they're fine 30 seconds later. Very odd. So that's a thing. Think about also substitution situations. Team is in the lead. They get 5 moments to sub, and all of a sudden at the 82nd minute, they take a sub, and someone takes a slow walk off from the center of the pitch, and then at the 86th minute, someone takes a sub, and then at the 89th minute, someone takes a sub, and all these things eat up time. Okay? They're running down the clock in an effort to preserve a lead and give their opponent as little time as possible to score, to tie it up, to win the match, whatever it might be. Sometimes people are just happy with a tie and, they're playing a team they think may be superior and they're just trying to limit the amount of time that the ball is in play or just slow the game down, give themselves a chance to catch a breath. So now the MLS is going to be implementing some rules that are going to address these situations. And these are major. I'm talking from a referee perspective and a player perspective. If you're in the MLS, this is going to have massive implications on the game. Massive. Now, it may not look a lot once this gets implemented and things are going smoothly and everyone understands, but I'm telling you, at the beginning, it's going to be big. So the first thing that happens, the first one is the, quote, off-field treatment rule. Off-field treatment rule. So if a player goes down on the field, okay, whether they've been fouled or it's a cramp, okay, and this is excluding yellow card or red card challenges, okay, common foul, okay, cramps, if they go down on the field of play, if the player stays down for more than, quote, 15 seconds, unquote. Now, that is a specific time, 15 seconds. Then that player must be removed from the field for a minimum of 2 minutes to receive treatment while that player's team plays a man down. That's right. You can't sub that player. Okay, you can't put someone in for the player who's gone down. If they go down and they stay on the ground for more than 15 seconds, that player has to come off for 2 full minutes to receive treatment, be evaluated, whatever, just walk off and play a man down because all of a sudden, miraculously, they're better. Doesn't matter. You got to stay off for 2 minutes. So right there, there are just a couple things that really go into my mind. Like, is this going to be like a boxing match where someone goes down and the referee starts walking up and doing like, a 10 count, like in boxing, except this time it's going to be a 15 count. It's going to be a 1, 2, 3. Are we going to see a counter pop up on the screen like a shot clock in basketball as soon as someone goes down? Like, who's going to be counting these 15 seconds? And when does that 15 seconds begin? Does that 15 seconds begin when we recognize this player might be down for more than 5 seconds? As soon as we see someone fall down, do we need to start counting? Like, when does that begin? When we blow the whistle to stop play? Is that the beginning of the count? I don't know. I haven't seen that. I'm really curious what the direction is to the referees on this one and who's going to be responsible for counting this. But you can already start to see some issues, right? Like, I'm a referee. I'm trying to manage the match. Even when someone goes down and I blow the whistle for that person going down, there might be other things that I need to watch on the pitch. So it's now I've got to, instead of like focusing on what's going on, communicating with my assistants, on the field or the fourth official, now I got to really focus on this player who's on the ground and counting and seeing when they actually get up or get them off the pitch for treatment. And you can imagine what's going to happen here. This is going to be really, really wild. But, it's I can see the positive, right? If a player goes down with quote unquote cramps in the gauge or a light challenge for a foul, well, that type of time wasting is no longer going to happen. And I can't even imagine, what this is going to be like if this was actually in the South American leagues. If you've ever watched a game in Argentina or Brazil or something like that, literally every single like touch that someone has seems to end on someone going down, like looking for a foul. So I am so curious to see how this is going to work out, especially the South American players. I mean, we used to have a guy in Atlanta, Ezequiel Barco. I believe he plays in Argentina now. And I swear, the slightest touch on this guy would go down like like a sack of potatoes, like every time. So it's going to be really interesting. The other major change, and I briefly kind of alluded to this earlier, was going to be with substitutions. So the time substitution rule. So again, we've got an off-field treatment rule. Now we've got a time substitution rule will require players to exit the playing field within 10 seconds of when being removed from the game. So when their number goes up on the board, if they fail to leave the field in 10 seconds, again, this is another thing that someone's going to be counting, their replacement is going to have to wait an additional minute and enter at the next stoppage. Okay, listen to that. The replacement's going to have to wait to come in an additional minute. So your team's going to play a player down and enter at the next stoppage of play. Now, this does not apply for goalkeepers or for injury subs. So if you have a player who's been, injured, I guess, you don't have to wait a minute, I guess, for that one. Or let's say it's a red card or yellow card offense and they can't continue. I guess you can go ahead and sub right there if they haven't left the field in 10 seconds, certainly. So there's some caveats to it. But again, we've all seen at the end of the games where someone takes their sweet time leaving the field. Now, someone is going to be counting. Now, I don't know if this is something that's going to be in the referee's head or they're going to do, again, like a boxing referee where they're going 1, 2, and they're like yelling the 10 count to this player. But my gosh, if they don't, well, then their team is going to play a player down for at least the next minute until there is a next stoppage in play after the minute. So it's a minimum of a minute. So this is, I could see this being really contentious. And I'm sure they're going to have a preseason. They're going to make sure they communicate this fully to the players. And I think they should know that this was coming because these rule changes have been trialed in the MLS Pro League, MLS Next Pro League for the past 2 seasons. So that's their reserve teams. And it's been shown to speed up gameplay, increase the amount of time that the ball is in play, and decrease the perceived premeditated time wasting. So they've trialed it for a year and a half. They think this is going to be helpful. I think, again, when you get to the professional level, there is so much more of what I would call performance art on the pitch, to get the crowd involved and, to sway the emotions of the game or the referee or whatever it might be. It's very different from MLS Next Pro, where there may just be, 100 parents or 150, spectators at the match. And also these guys are fighting for a shot on the reserve team. I think it's a different energy and a different match control. And that's the thing for me. It's for the referee in particular. Okay, it's one thing if you're managing this and you're on your own at a field again with no television cameras, right? And you're in control of the watch and the clock. But when you start getting very specific for that 10 seconds or 15-second count, now there's going to be a counter that's on the screen at home. Maybe there's a counter that's going to be in the stadiums. I have no idea. And so it's going to put an exceptional amount of scrutiny on the official to be able to consistently implement this. And further, everyone's always wanting consistency. And now you've got another one of these situations. Now, I don't know. Like, are they going to manage it to 10 seconds and 15 seconds exact? Or is it going to be like the 6-second rule for goalkeepers? How often does that actually get implemented is exactly how it's written. It's a bit ridiculous. So I'm not sure, what's going to happen here. I think this could be helpful without a doubt as it relates to time wasting. I'm just so curious about the implementation and the consistency of it. that's really going to get me. And I guarantee there is going to be a situation relatively early on in the season where it's going to be, a tie game with 3 minutes left and someone's going to go down, and all of a sudden they're going to be down for 16 seconds and the referee is going to tell them to get off the field, for 2 minutes, and then the other team is going to score, and it's going to be all about the referee again. And it's going to be all about the referee, or maybe they were only down for 14 seconds, but the referee counted 15 seconds or 16 seconds. It's just, I just see so many opportunities for this to be another thing to specifically try and put blame on a referee for trying to implement a very, very difficult rule change. And I know it sounds simple, but I'm just trying to think about, you're on the pitch. When does the time start? When does the time end? And how are you going to communicate this? And how is it going to be depicted on the broadcast as well? It's just another one of these things that's going to be kind of crazy and have, the fans going, what's going on? Okay, so the other thing, and this is actually a positive for me, is that this was trialed, I believe, at the Women's World Cup, if I'm not mistaken, where now the MLS refs, which this should happen all around the world, I don't know why we haven't gotten there yet in the professional leagues, is that MLS refs will now announce the VAR decisions to the stadium, and therefore the audience watching at home, after decisions are made where video assistant review has been involved. So if we have a situation where the referee has to be called to the monitor, then after they do that, they will announce the decision to the audience. So the decision can be that, okay, after video review, the on-field decision of goal kick has now been changed to penalty kick. Okay, that could be an example. There could be a decision where it was given as a yellow card in the field and red card. So you're going to hear them say, after video review, the decision on the field of a yellow card for a reckless challenge has now been upgraded to a red card for serious foul play. Now, I think these are great, as a referee. Like, I understand, what that means, reckless challenge, serious foul play, something of that nature. But I think the people at home are going to want more. And I wish we could give more. Like, I wish we could say, the on-field decision was a yellow card for a reckless challenge, but upon video review, we saw that there was excessive force, contact point was above the ankle with exposed studs, in a lunging tackle, whatever that might be. But some of the words that, we use as considerations to make one determination or another. And I know that there's risk in that, right? There's certainly risk because maybe someone gets their words wrong and someone tries to parse it out with the laws of the game. It's a thing. But, I don't feel that people at home understand that reckless means a yellow card and serious foul play means a red card. They don't necessarily know those words per se. So, again, when we have someone, someone has hands to the face and it doesn't look awful. It's not like you threw a hard punch, but, their hands kind of, brush them across the cheek and it was deemed not to be negligible, but they get sent off for violent conduct. People are going to be like, what's violent about that? So I just think that there can be a challenge using our very technical referee language, in a broadcast, but it's certainly a step forward. We had a situation just a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure which league this was in. I'm trying to remember the exact play that was sent to me. But a referee had their arm raised up for an I almost made a mistake, an indirect free kick. And the broadcasters were like, I didn't see an offside in the buildup. Where was the offside? Let's look at this again. And they keep on going through the play over and over again, trying to find the offside. It wasn't an offside. It was that the kicker of the ball was a free kick from like 5 yards outside the penalty area. It smashed off the crossbar, didn't touch anyone else coming out, and went right back to the kicker. So the kicker called an indirect free kick offense, which is the kicker touched the ball twice. I would love for the referee to be able to announce these calls, to to everyone at home. Is there a charge? Is it a trip? Is it a push? Is it a pull? Is it, an indirect free kick offense for touching the ball twice or something of nature before another opponent touches? Can there be some hand signals if we're not going to have voice signals or something of nature? But I look at what, the NFL does, or in American basketball, and they have signals, even American hockey, to explain the calls to the people who are playing the game, but everyone who's watching the game as well, in the stadium, at the park, on TV, everyone understands what's going on. And I think that would go a long way to helping people understand the laws of the game. I think this little thing of announcing the calls from VAR to the stadium, is helpful so that people understand what the call was, but it still feels like we can go a lot further. That would be nice. All right. Now for me, a little look back on 2023 as a year for me as a referee. As a referee, definitely learned and grew a lot over the past year. Now I actually have a little bit of a notoriety when I step onto a soccer pitch. So when I roll up to a soccer pitch, pretty much immediately these days, kids are like, yo, are you the TikTok ref? Yo, are you the TikTok ref? Sometimes like coaches that come up to me, I'll have parents come up to me after the game saying, hey, I follow you on TikTok. I'm a big fan. So I actually, it's funny. I love it that people are watching my channels. But there's a little bit of pressure now to be exceptional. Every time I have a whistle or a flag in my hand and I put that jersey on, not that I didn't give my best before, I'm kind of a little bit of a nerd like that, and I'm perfectionist, so I do want to give my best. But now I live kind of in fear that if I mess up now, it's going to be all over social media in a heartbeat. It's like, oh, TikTok ref didn't get this call right. How did TikTok ref not call a red card here? How did TikTok ref not catch that offside or whatever it was? So I definitely feel a little extra pressure. And, this is self-inflicted, so whatever. It comes with the territory. I probably did around 150 matches in 2023. I can only remember one match as I look back over the course of the year where I didn't feel like I had complete control. And I'd love to see a full minute video of this match to analyze my decisions. I tried getting the video. I messaged the guy like 3 or 4 times, but for whatever reason, it was corrupted or blah, blah, blah. But it was a highly competitive U19 boys match. And so let me just say this. When you're 19 years old, you think you know everything. Like you're 19, you haven't gone to college yet. So you're U19. So you're 18 years old, 17 years old. You're a senior in high school. You think you know everything. Everything. There were at least 5 yellow cards in that match, and I had 1 red card for dogso on a goalkeeper coming out, sliding out, and taking down an opponent who was throwing goal. This match, just like every match, I try and be friendly, and I'm a verbal referee who likes to communicate and explain decisions. But sometimes I really do feel like my kindness can be perceived as weakness. And every now and then, the conversation and dialogue can devolve into whining and dissent if left unchecked. And some teams also, I would tell you, some teams have a game plan to try and draw fouls and play for free kicks rather than beating their opponents with technical skills in passing. And it's not to say that that is not an acceptable form of football or soccer. It is. I mean, there are teams who have made it to the Premier League who do pretty much that, where they bunker and they sit back and they play a long ball, over top to a big striker who hopefully holds it up or maybe gets fouled and then they get a free kick. But if they're not getting those free kicks, okay, and they're not getting those opportunities, further up the field, they get upset and frustrated. I mean, there was one player who, was a winger on this team. And I tell you, this kid would go down if you blew on him and start crying for a foul. I mean, it's not there wasn't contact, but oh my gosh, this was like, it was ridiculous. And yes, I did call fouls on his behalf, but if he didn't get a foul, he would just cry. And at halftime, I was briefly talking to the coach because he was actually like, hey, at my estimation, the other teams had 14 fouls and we've had like 5 fouls at this point. And I said to him, I was like, well, coach, if you have possession of the ball and the other team has possession and they're dribbling the ball, on the ground through the middle of the pitch, they're going to get fouls, because they've got, more opportunity for fouls. If you're just kicking long, you don't have a lot of possession, you're not going to get a lot of fouls. and I did make mention. I was like, and by the way, that guy over there, those aren't fouls. He's initiating contact on a lot of those things. And he's like, yeah, I know. I have to deal with it all the time. Like, it was pretty funny. But the team in particular just kept getting, more and more upset and frustrated, especially after they got a red card, again, for what I feel was a very legitimate and clear call, of a keeper coming out, sliding in. Yeah, they might have gotten a little bit of ball, but went right through the onrushing attacker as well with studs. I mean, it was a pretty, clear call. And again, when you're that last defender right there and the player's throwing goal, it was a pretty easy call for me. But I'd love to see that back on film if I could. So that one was one that I learned from. And I definitely I left the game feeling pretty deflated and questioning my decisions. It's one of those things that I'm like, I need to tighten up my level for dissent. Again, I don't mind people talking to me or having questions for me, but there's a point where if you're asking a question every single foul, that's dissent. I mean, that's persistent dissent. And I needed to jump on that a little bit quicker. And I did, as I went through the rest of my season, I learned from it. I'm not sure if my positioning on that dog show was where I'd like to be. I feel like I was right behind the play where I would have liked to have been to the side of that play. So yeah, it's just a bummer. It was funny. I caught up with one of the coaches, a couple weeks later, and I asked him about his thoughts of that game. And he's like, man, you did great. He's like, I can't wait for you to ref my next one. So it's so funny how sometimes, we can be tough on ourselves, even when we've done a great job on the pitch. But, you live and learn. My high school season, which is a spring season, we're about to actually start my spring season coming up soon. In Georgia, spring high school season starts at the beginning of or end of January. So it's right around the corner for me. But my high school season was perfect. Didn't have a single issue. Yes, some high school fans can be a tad obnoxious and a poor understanding of the rules and laws, but it adds atmosphere and makes it fun to have them there cheering their classmates on. I got to work 5 playoff matches last year and had my first whistle in a playoff match, and it went great. No issues at all, aside from the 3-hour lightning delay and not getting home till midnight that night. But, hey, it happens. The fall club season was smooth, no issues. I felt great physically. I had literally virtually no issues aside from that one match. I will tell you, every now and then, and this goes back to the notoriety thing, I'll get a player or an assistant coach that makes a snide remark about me being a TikTok ref after a call goes against their team. And I simply remind them pretty forcefully, no laughing. It's like, ref or sir is the only way to address me, and anything else would be disrespectful and card worthy. And I'm like, are we clear? And it usually ends right there. On a sad note, my son Jacob decided to give up reffing this year in his senior year of high school. I will say he had a pretty difficult sophomore and junior year of high school, emotionally speaking, and being a referee was not contributing to his overall mental well-being. It was just, it's a tough time, as it is for all kids. But, as a ref, it can be stressful too. And when we were assigned matches, we could be anxious around certain matches. We had a few pretty negative experiences reffing adult amateur matches in the fall of his senior year that really soured the whole experience for him. And it simply isn't worth $50 or $60 if you think you might get assaulted or threatened with assault. And so I will say that was one sad part of my refereeing experience this past year. I am thrilled that I got to spend 7 years working with him almost every weekend. I enjoyed the rides to and from the pitch, the time discussing every match, the pride of running a line for him and seeing him make a great call, the awe I'd experience watching him manage a coach on a sideline, and I'm thankful for every moment I had with him. But I did have a little bit of a hole in my heart this year. I know that being a referee has made him a better man. I'm thrilled that I got to be part of that process with him. In 2023, the Refs Need Love 2 channel surpassed my hopes and dreams in terms of reach and the positive impact it can have on the world. Not a week goes by that I don't receive a message from someone thousands of miles away telling me how much they appreciate the knowledge and insights being shared on my TikTok, blog, Insta, and even this podcast. At the time of this recording, we now have over 185,000 followers on social media, and my podcast is one of the 25% most downloaded podcasts in the US, which is crazy. It's ridiculous. I find that just to be so hard to get my head around, but it's crazy. Over the past year, I've been a guest on at least 7 other podcasts. I've been a featured guest for the English Referees Association on one of their monthly webinars. I was quoted in numerous articles. I was even a keynote speaker at the National Symposium for Women's Gymnastics Judges. As a side hustle, the revenue I generate from video views and engagement and the merch and gear I sell on my website, Amazon, and TikTok shop has enabled me to reinvest in the brand and connect with my audience in a physical way, with merch and stuff, which is really cool. I try and include an original handwritten note in every single item that gets shipped from my house, and it's just a rare thing these days, and people really appreciate it. Considering that I'm only a little over 2 years into this journey, I think it's been pretty successful. I mean, who knows where it's going to take me in 2024. And now for the mailbag. This is a message I got from Australia, from a referee who's about 10 years my senior, but I thought it was cool and I wanted to share it with you. So it starts with, "Hello from down under. I'm a mature aged ref, 58, put it in parentheses, who took up refereeing at 54 after 49 years of playing and regrets not doing it sooner." So he's been a player for 49 years. So when he started when he was 5 years old and he was a player, and he's always kept lean and fit, was never good at individual sports until he found a calling later in life. It appears, and this is what he writes, "It appears I have the right temperament even at my old age." He was appointed to the local 21s and Premier League semifinals last year. So under 21s and Premier League semifinals last year. I referee in Sutherlandshire area of Sydney that has approximately 18,000 registered players, of which over 30% are women, and 350 referees covering the matches. So quite a group he's a part of. There are 6 divisions of over 35s and 5 divisions of over 45s, with 13 divisions of all age, just to give you an idea of how popular sport is population-wise here. The weekend matches here in winter start at 7 a.m. on Saturdays and 8 a.m. on Sundays, and the fields are mostly full until 4:30 p.m. Needless to say, the assistant referees can be few and far between in most matches, and there is never enough to cover all the games, so I often referee an all-age 4th division with no offside assistance. About 5 years ago, we introduced a 10-minute sin bin for referee dissent, and it's the best thing they have ever done. Now, I think this is interesting because I know IFAB's been talking about approving this for all leagues after there have been some trials around the world. So very interesting. He said, "In a fiery game, yellow carding a player for dissent by word or action can quickly pull everyone into line as they think this ref means business. Personally, at international level, I think it's way out of control, as no other sport in the world puts up with the type of dissent they receive, and I believe it brings the game into disrepute. Midweek, I took up 5-a-side refereeing. So this guy's been busy on the pitch at a local sports center to improve my refereeing, and I have done over 1,500 games in 3 years there. 1,500 games. Okay. It's tough as it's on a court where the ball essentially never goes out, and foul identification and game management is paramount." He writes, "I was reading your blog about why you love being a referee, and I thought I would share with you one of mine. On my way home from a match last year, a neighbor called out to me, 'Did you win?' Not really knowing I was a ref. I called back to him, 'I always win. I'm a referee.'" Whew. Specifically, what I meant by that was, as a player, you experience the ups and downs of sport, the exhilaration of winning, and the flat feeling you get after a loss. As a referee, after 95% of the matches I ref, I get the same feeling as the winners. I'm both physically and mentally exhausted. I know in my head I've had a great game and I've had the best seat in the house, so to speak, of a good football match, the sport I love. I think that's so interesting. I've had the best seat in the house, so to speak, of a good football match, the sport I love. He continues, "The other takeaway I picked up from your website blog was the Ted Lasso reference to the goldfish. I am my hardest judge, and after a mistake, I have trouble shaking it off for several minutes, and this is something I plan to work on next season. Even when I get home, I put my feet up and have a cold beer. I look back, kicking myself inside for not being in the right position for the wrong call." So I think this is so interesting. He ended up with a question as well, but I just thought that was so cool. Again, this person in Australia, on the other side of the world, And his experience after being a player for 49 years and now stepping in as a referee and still finding that same love and joy he did as a player, if not even more so. I wish more players would do what he's doing. And my gosh, has he given back to the game big time here. Unbelievable. So thank you, sir. Really, really appreciate you. All right, just one last one from the mailbag. And it starts, I just want to say I love your work. I have shown the parents of the kids I coach your page so they know the rules better. I'm a young referee, and the situations you go through and review are great as a ref and a coach. I cannot express how great your page is. Thank you for your hard work. So we'll let that one be the last message from the mailbag for 2023. I'm sure I've made many mistakes this year, but hopefully I've learned from them and grown as a person. And we have so much more to do in 2024. I hope you enjoyed today's pod. I appreciate all the love and support you've given me over the past year, and hopefully it will continue in the year to come. I know I am not perfect, but hopefully through this podcast, the videos, the blogs I produce, we can create a culture of understanding, empathy, love, and respect that is badly needed throughout the beautiful game. Refs need love too. Please consider reviewing this podcast wherever you're listening to it, whether it be Apple, Spotify, or someplace else. The more reviews it gets, the further this message of love and support can go for our referees. I'd also ask you to support the channel on my store at refsneedlove2.com. Every dime you invest goes back into making this channel the best it can possibly be. I wish you nothing but love and respect as we finish out 2023 and move into 2024. And I hope whenever that next match occurs that it is red card